Hi friends, Ray Lutz here with Citizens Oversight. I'd like to give you a quick overview of our lawsuit and its present status and try to put to rest some of the discussion going on and some of the exaggerations perhaps. This lawsuit happened right after this primary because of the 1% manual tally that was not being done correctly. I'm going to give you an overview of how these audit procedures normally take place, and then hopefully then you'll understand our lawsuit and how it fits in. And then the next step would be, what are the implications for that and how do we follow it up? We'll do this really fast so we can get it done in record time. You see this graphic here. Basically on the left side you'll see the little man there looking at a ballot. This represents the Voter Verified Paper Audit Trail, or VVPAT. Basically, this is extremely important. You can't do any kind of auditing of this electronic counting process unless you have physical paper ballots that you can actually take a look at and see what the vote is, or what the voter intended to vote. And so you need that, or else you've got nothing. Sometimes it's a touch screen and then a roll of paper that the voter gets to take a look at and see if what they voted on the touch screen matches. It doesn't work unless the voter actually takes a look at it. Otherwise, there could be quite a bit of difference. But between the paper ballot, of course, when you're executing the ballot, you're verifying that it's what you want to vote. The touchscreen machines can be helpful because they can actually help you different languages, different ballot types, and essentially not make mistakes, too few votes, too many votes, and so forth, so that your votes are not invalidated. So there are some good reasons to have that. After the vote is collected here in the ballots. Now, I'm not going to cover every possible shenanigan that's going on in this area, such as keeping voters away from the polls, registration difficulties. You have to register a long time before, getting the provisional ballots when they shouldn't be, all kinds of stuff, the rigging that's happening here to try to game the system. That'll be a different topic, but once these ballots are executed, they can be put into one of these four slots here. Vote by mail ballots are in the green. They're executed either by mailing them or dropping them off. And the polls ballots are executed in person. There's two sets there. The ones that are regular polls ballots and the provisional ballots. So usually somebody went to the wrong polling place, or they had to get they wanted to vote and were a mail ballot voter, but they didn't have their mail ballot to drop off. So they have to see, did they actually vote by mail or not. If they did vote by mail, then the vote by mail ballot is the one that is counted, not the in-person ballot. So in order of time, the early vote by mail ballots at the top here are the ones that are first received, because those are processed during the first 30 days before the election, and the first 10 days, the last 10 days before the election, you can actually start counting them. On election night, 8 p.m., the results that come out are these first vote by mail ballots. Those were, in this case, the tallied precincts, which are the ones that were audited, were 58% Hillary against 42% Bernie in that race. Whereas the polls ballots, the ones executed at the polls, were just the other way around. Bernie won 58 to Hillary 42. So you're wondering, well, what is the big difference here? Is it really, that's an amazing difference. I really don't see in fact, I've never seen that big of a difference before between the early vote by mail and the regular polls ballots. And it gives you, makes you wonder what's going on. The later vote by mail ballots were about even split, 50-50, and why are those so much different than the early vote by mail ballots? Hard to understand that too. Now the thing here is that all of these ballots eventually are scanned. These ones in the red aren't really process until after election night is over, maybe in the next month it takes to actually get these all done. This one and these in the blue are actually processed by the end of election night. In any case, they're run through an automatic scanner and created and counted by a computer, generated a computer report. The computer report is then totaled up by precinct. That is each and every precinct. There's 1,522 in San Diego. So you take precinct 1, 2, 3, and every single race and what the totals are. That would be this fairly lengthy computer report. And then you total up just the races amongst all the precincts. You just have the number of the races. That's the final result of the election. And the question is did anything go on in here? Did people monkey with the computer file to rig the election and get their preferred results? Well, if you did that, you'd have to change quite a few precincts, because you only have so many votes in each one to really get it to change. But you wouldn't know in all this unless you went back and looked at the actual ballots at the very beginning, did a complete recount. You wouldn't know unless you had some process. So what they've done is they've actually instituted this audit process, which is a very, very good thing. And it's there's problems with it in that it's not a third party doing it. It's not someone else that's taking a look at the register. They do it to themselves. So we have to provide the oversight, because guess what? If we rely upon them to audit themselves, they're going to cut corners, and that's exactly what they did here. I'll tell you about that in a second. The actual way they're supposed to do it is from this entire set of all the ballots cast. They're supposed to choose 1% of the precincts in random out of that 1,522, then manual tally those by hand, sit down and look at each ballot, total up the votes, get the computer results for those same precincts, and then compare them and see how they match. See if they're way off or about the same. Was it a misfeed? Was it a extra box that was scanned that wasn't supposed to be scanned? Or were the results tampered with? We also recommend getting the snapshot data file, but that's part of the snapshot protocol. I'm really not going to cover that here. All that does is it freezes the computer report before they do the 1% selection, so that the compromised employees are not able to modify the computer results, so that then they would then match if they modified one of those 16 precincts. So here's what happened. And this time we've been noticing that Michael Vu, the registrar of voters in San Diego, who, by the way, used to work in Cuyahoga County, Ohio, and was the registrar there when two of his subordinates were convicted of absentee voter fraud in the 2004 election. Basically, we know now that election was fixed, so that Kerry would have won over Bush, except for this rigging that happened in Ohio. He was allowed to just resign, and then he got instantly a new job in a bigger district, San Diego, within 2 to 4 months, as a reward for his deed, apparently. Now, here we've been watching him not do in the red, these are the ballots that are scanned later on. These were not included in the 1% manual tally, about 40% of the ballots, which eliminates the usefulness of this audit, because if 40% of the ballots are not included, these could easily be changed to slant the election, and you would never know because it's not part of the audit process. This number of ballots here in San Diego was 285,000 ballots, quite a large number. When you compare it with the difference between Hillary and Bernie, was only 15,000 ballots at the end. So amongst those 285,000 ballots, you certainly could have swayed this part of the election. So when we noticed that Michael Vu wasn't including this section in the audit, and we've been watching this for a number of years, but we finally got all were watching it carefully, noticed that he did it, told him that he was, asked him to include them. He said no, respectfully, he said. And then we said, okay, you won't talk to us about it? No. So we ended up filing our lawsuit, and the two parts of the lawsuit were to stop the certification unless they do this correctly, and second, to come to the conclusion that they can't do this that way. They can't not follow the law. The California law says that all ballots cast, including vote-by-mail ballots, will be included in the audit. So there's no way they can get out and say that the later vote-by-mail ballots should not be included. It doesn't say except for the later vote-by-mail ballots. It doesn't say do not include the provisional ballots. Their argument is that at one time in the discussion of this, they said all the polls ballots and vote-by-mail ballots and provisional ballots, and they eliminated the and provisional ballots. And in our view, that's like saying all cars and all black cars. You don't have to say all black cars if you say all cars. And so all the polls ballots includes all the provisional ballots in the scope of that. But by the same way of saying all vote-by-mail ballots includes the early ballots and the later vote-by-mail ballots. They say that at one time they were talking about it, and they said the provisional ballots don't need to be included, and therefore when they say now all ballots cast at the polls, it doesn't mean provisionals. So we're in dispute there. There are about at least a half a dozen other counties in the state that that signed declarations saying that they also do it incorrectly. And of course, they said they do it what they think is okay because they think that it's good to save money by not doing it all, save time by not doing it all, and you know who cares? Because no one's watching basically. Other people are doing it wrong too, so it's okay for us to do it. No, that's why we have to put our foot down and say no. So what happened was we filed this, we said we want it stopped and we want it not done again. The judge heard us on July 6th, which is one day before the deadline to certify, which was July 7th. And he heard both sides, he took it under submission, didn't decide it on that at that time, and then later he did issue a ruling on this, and let me pull it up here. We have the ruling. Let's see, get it in both here. So here's the web page on our Cops Wiki website. We have the press conference, the actual ruling, but I broke it down here because the actual ruling is not a file that can be viewed. Basically, I have the summary, but this is the actual text of the ruling, but in a form where we can highlight things. And this happened later. So essentially the certification was done. The Secretary of State, Alex Padilla, who campaigned and did fundraising for Hillary Clinton, said the election is over. And they had a rushed convention. Never before have they been this early. So they ramrodded this thing through, got it through the convention. We had no time to challenge these elections at all because it was already a done deal. Of course, Bernie Sanders gave up too. Now, what he said here is that because the certification of San Diego County primary results occurred, which he says basically happened after the Secretary of State certified the results, he says the application for the preliminary injunction is moot. I mean, it doesn't make any sense to pursue this because it's already over with. We can't stop them from certifying at this point. He took too long. It was just too much work to go over, and he has too much on his plate apparently. I don't really want to, say the judge wasn't doing his job. That isn't the problem, because I'm sure he's overwhelmed with other cases. But we need, and unfortunately, he couldn't get to this one in time. However, he goes on after this, and he says that although the case may originally present an existing controversy, it's been lost before the court. Okay, now he says here, although moot to the primary election results, when an issue of broad public interest is posed, the court may exercise its inherent discretion to resolve the issue. So he went on, and this is pretty unusual for the judge to go on. He didn't have to. He could have just said it was moot, and we're not going to say anything more about the other one until later. But he says, well, this is really important, so we're going to go on and cover it. And he says that because we seek, the plaintiffs, that's us, seek a declaration regarding all future elections. And then he says, because of that, the first cause of action is not moot. And so we can go ahead and pursue that. Very important. He goes on to say that the 1% manual tally is very important. And then it comes down here, I'm going to skip down to the bottom, where he says, the San Diego County Registrar of Voters has a legal obligation to comply with Section 15360, and that's the section that defines the 1% manual tally. It is imperative that auditing requirements are followed completely in order to ensure the continued public confidence of election results. Now, of course, that assumes that we have public confidence of election results, but basically what we've got done here is we caught them shortcutting their own audit. And of course, we also have questions about the rest of their processes that they're using here, because there are many, many other problems, such as whiting out ballots, having a shredding truck parked by the ROV in the middle of the election, adding marks to the ballots. This hanky-panky that they did with stopping people from being able to vote for president, they were in the wrong party or something like this. A lot of rigging that goes on up front. But this 1% manual tally was done very wrong, 40% wrong. He goes on to say that the San Diego County Registrar of Voters is obligated to allocate its resources appropriately in order to comply with the law. Of course, what did they say? It's too expensive, takes too long. It's better for us to do it quickly because it's prudent business practice. Other counties are doing it wrong too, so it's okay for us to do it that way. And he basically threw all that out. And if the defendants are unable to follow the law, then they have to seek to change it, not go through the court. You can't just not follow the law. You know, you're obligated to follow the law. If you're an election official, you must follow the law. Otherwise, you have to say, gee, we can't follow, it's too hard or whatever. And then we have to have it out in the legislature. So now I want to go back to the chart here that we had. That would be in this one here. Essentially now, we've gone through the fact that this is basically the process. The fact that they weren't doing any of this red portion, they weren't included in the audit, and that's what we're demanding them to do so. Now, what would the implications be if they had, why are they not doing this? Is it a reason that they're trying to manipulate the elections? Maybe. Maybe if we have them, what we're demanding is that we go back and that they go back and do the entire audit again and including a new 1% selection so we can check everything. That's what we proposed to the county, to say, look, if you want to settle this, you have to admit that you're wrong, say you'll never do it again, and also go back and redo the 1% manual tally in its entirety. Of course, they didn't jump to agree with that, but that's going to be what we're going to try to get done through the rest of the trial. Now, the trial is going to occur on October 3rd, 2016, according to the schedule that's put on the table right now, but check back with us in case that changes. It's set aside for 3 days. So mark your calendars. We'll have more information later as we get to that. Now in between, we're going to be doing discovery. We're going to be deposing, interviewing under oath Michael Vu and trying to find out as much as we can about what he does in his registrar, his background, etc. And maybe some others as well. And we're going to be doing other discovery to try to find out about this, the whiting out issue. Now, what is our game plan, though? This is the final thing. We're looking at, yes, the trial is coming down. Yes, we're very confident that we're going to win because this is the law that they have to follow this. We've already asked other counties if they're going to be following it or not, or just blatantly still ignoring it. If they say that they're going to ignore it, then we're going to include them in our case. What we want to do, because we see this audit process as extremely important to make sure that these election officials are doing the right thing and not monkeying with the election. They're auditing themselves, so it's only so powerful. But we as citizens must provide the oversight to make sure our elections are running smoothly. No one else is going to do it for us. Elected officials, they got elected, so they're not going to want to monkey with a system that got them in. So we have to make sure that this system is going to be fair. The audit process is the key to doing that. Of course, it relies upon the paper ballots or some sort of a paper trail which the voter gets to verify up front. This has to exist, and many states and areas don't have this at all. So our game plan then with citizens oversight is we've identified 175 counties throughout the country, and some of them are multiple counties, districts, where these districts are the top districts in terms of numbers of voters. And those 175 comprise half of the voters. There's of some 8,000 districts, so we're taking just the minimum number to have a very big impact on what's happening. We want to attempt to get teams in as many of those districts as possible to understand this audit process, be able to provide oversight in a very systematic process which we call the snapshot protocol, and gather information and be there on the spot, boots on the ground within the election official's office. We need to get this in place by the beginning of October because that's when they first start to deal with their vote by mail ballots. We don't have that much time. Our trial needs to be at about the same time that we have these teams in place in these 175 districts or so. Now, we're not going to turn people down if they're not in those particular districts and they don't quite rise to the same level, because in each state you can look at the top 20, the top 40% of the districts state by state, and those are still important. But some states seem not unimportant because of the number of voters, like Nevada, but they have a big town like Las Vegas and a big district, Clark County, which would have to be, which rates way up there. I think they're number 18. That's an example of somebody that a district that rates high in the overall view, but low if you go a state by state basis. Now, that's the overall status of this. There's other nuances in here that I didn't try to cover every nuance in this. I just wanted to give you the big picture. I know a lot of people are just getting started understanding and watching election integrity and understanding how the ballots are counted and all of what a mess it really is. What we'll be doing is we've started having weekly phone conference calls where we go over the issues like this one, and also some tutorials where we have procedures that you can follow to target the areas in your state to go after and do the snapshot protocol during the election, also boots on the ground in the election district. That's our game plan. Again, Ray Lutz, Citizens Oversight. Please sign up at citizensoversight.org/sign up. Donate at citizensoversight.org/donate. Thank you. Bye-bye.